Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by John Sneisen, economic analyst, and of course runs the Economic Truth, and you all haven't seen him in a while, but we got some videos to do because there's a lot of stuff happening in Canada, nothing but great news. I'm just kidding, of course. Really bad news for the future of the Canadian economy. Something that we at WHAM have talked about for what feels like decades, but it's been for the last decade. We've warned about this happening eventually. And, you know, the coronavirus, the lockdown, that was just a catalyst for what we are seeing, but not the cause. And I want to go into this article quickly from state-run propaganda news site CBC News, which says Ottawa to post $343 billion deficit as spending hits levels not seen since Second World War. And as it says, federal debt load will hit $1.2 trillion in 2020 to 2021, the government projects in its fiscal snapshot. And as the article goes into further, it says Finance Minister Bill Morneau tabled a fiscal snapshot today that shows the federal government's deficit is expected to hit $343 billion this year, an eye-popping figure lately attributed to pandemic-related support programs that have pushed federal spending to a level not seen since the Second World War. The 168-page snapshot offers a short-term economic analysis and a detailed account of what the government has spent already to shore up an economy on life support. It presents little in the way of a long-term plan to return the economy to pre-pandemic normalcy. And I quote, "Some will criticize us on the cost of action," Morneau said in a speech in the House of Commons today. "But our government knew that the cost of inaction would be far greater." And I quote, "Those who would have us do less ignored that. Without government action, millions of jobs would have been lost, putting the burden of debt onto families and jeopardizing Canada's resilience." Talk about some serious Orwellian doublespeak. The reason all those things are happening is because government's involved in the first place, because the central bank's involved in the first place. They create the problem, come in as a solution, and now they're blaming the coronavirus. They're the ones that cause the poverty, which will kill far more than the coronavirus ever will. John, what's going on? This is history in the making for sure, and it's not looking like it's going to get better anytime soon, but they're still patting themselves on the back.
Yeah, no, it's surprising and funny at the same time how bad it actually got. But it's with the actual intervention that the government did after they closed the economy, of course, that they caused the bubble, the debt bubble here to prick in the first place here in Canada, of course. It just baffles my mind. Like, there's no other central bank, especially the central bank intervention. There's no other central bank in the world that are even close. The only one that's beating us right now is Venezuela, and that should scare the bejesus out of a lot of people out there. So that's really dangerous. But of course, underlying all this stuff, if we actually go and take a look at the balance sheet of Bank of Canada, the whooping number that it's at right now, it's $528 billion. And that's a whooping increase of 332%, 332% since when was that? Let me give you the actual time here. That was since early March. So like mid-March, it was jumped 323%, 32%. Which is just insane. And then, of course, not to talk about the Canadian debt. So we're going from 775,000, they said, to about $1.2 trillion. So, sorry, 775 billion, of course, $1.2 trillion. Well, if that's the case, you know how much the debt is rising? 54.83%. The total debt of the Canadian government in one year alone, and that is just like, it's just baffling. This is what they're doing. They're just high on money printing, these guys, and of course you and me, we talked to a certain guy that's in the news, of course, with all this craziness, and that was Bill Morneau. And of course, his buddy, you confronted several times, Justin Trudeau. But these guys are just blatantly blind, and I don't know.
Are they blind, or are they evil, or are they stupid? It's hard to pick. I think all of the above.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think all of them. There's, like it just baffles me. But of course, it was no surprise that they had to do all this intervention if they had to, because of all the massive debt bubble that was built before. And I warned about this in my book, Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World, where I just saw the debt burden of Canadians, both on the private and the public side, is just mind-boggling.
Well, John, I wanted to ask you about that a little bit, because obviously there's just been unlimited amounts of debt created into existence, just unbelievable amounts of debt. And a lot of people, it leaves a lot of people asking, what's the difference? What difference does it make at this point how much debt there is? It's just constant flow of debt coming in. How will this affect people any different from before?
Well, of course, everybody's getting something for free, right? You got the CERB program. You got so many other ridiculous programs that have been implemented to try to make sure that everybody's getting money. Now, of course, people like me, I've worked through the whole crisis without the mouth mask or any precautions. I just live my life normally, and I haven't caught any virus here. And
I mean, you're not a little bitch boy? Sorry, I'll have to bleep that out.
Yeah, no, that's what now I just listened to Brent Rusin, the head of Manitoba Health, saying that at the next flu season it's going to be mandatory to wear masks now. Like, are you kidding me?
Dude, where I am right now in Las Vegas, it's 102, it's like 45 Celsius. Walking down the street, everyone's wearing black masks because their daddy government told them to. It's the most insane thing I've ever seen. Like, these are the people that would have let Hitler reign. These are the people that would have let Stalin reign.
Well, listen, so, what about Manitoba, okay? So in Manitoba, there was no, everybody's claiming, masks is the one that stops the spread really well. Well, how come there's no cases here in Manitoba and nobody's really wearing masks here? I see very few people every day. Maybe I see like a dozen at the most when I drive around in the city. It's very few people that are actually wearing masks here. And we are one of the places in the world that has the least amount of corona cases per citizen. It just baffles me. Like, now they're going to start to implement this because, it's so much better to have masks. But meanwhile, nobody was wearing masks and nobody really spread it.
Well, a great example of that, John, is that in the United States, I think the rate per million of deaths is 186 per million, which, by the way, is mostly manipulated, not including all the cases of pneumonia and cancer, leukemia, other things that were marked as COVID. But nonetheless, about 186 per million. Mexico is 14 per million. I was living in Mexico for a few months, as you know. And there was very little lockdown until kind of the last second where things got super totalitarian. But nonetheless, during the time there wasn't lockdown, it wasn't happening. And let me get these stats straight first, because I've been saying it in all my videos for new viewers because I think it's important. Initially, they said that it would be 3.7% to 7% death toll. What we ended up seeing from the CDC's own recent study in the United States, they said that the rate of death, the mortality rate, is 0.26%. If you take out nursing homes, it's 0.2%. If you take out people over 50, it's 0.1%. If you consider all asymptomatic cases, it's 0.04%, and that's if you get coronavirus, your chances of death. If you take that all away and just generally speaking for everyone, it's 0.002%. I mean, at this point, this is just absolute tyranny, and look what it's doing to people. John, you mentioned how much debt has skyrocketed in Canada in the last year, and the deficit spending and all this insanity. The Roman Empire would be pretty proud of what Canada is doing right now. I wanted to ask, where do you see it going in the next year? Because they're talking about second shutdown. They're already doing that in a lot of places. The Orwellianism and totalitarianism is skyrocketing everywhere right now. I mean, where do you see that going in a year's time? How can it possibly sustain itself?
Well, like talking about the Bank of Canada, for example, they've been buying derivatives like asset-backed securities. They've been buying municipal bonds. They've been buying corporate bonds. They've been basically buying whatever they could get their hands on, except for stocks and bonds and ETFs. But that's being done by, of course, the Federal Reserve in the United States. I just foresee like a massive buy-up, and suddenly you would have the central banks owning, as much as 50 to 80% of different markets, like the stock market, the ETFs market.
Like your article said years ago, John, the Federal Reserve will own everything and then nothing.
Well, yeah, it was pretty obvious because a certain perpetrator, the Bank of Japan in Japan, well, they actually have been doing this for a very long time since they had a massive stagnating economy caused by aging population. And what do we have here in Canada? We have an aging population. We have an aging population in Europe and in the United States, a lot of places. And of course, the problem is that when you have that, you're going to have a natural deflationary state of the economy, which, of course, no central banker can have. They will panic and poop their pants if that happens. Any tiny little, and that's, of course, the response now has just been epic beyond proportions. And of course, it's because we're at the money printing scheme that is just beyond ridiculous right now. We're putting this is so historical that we're putting any other Zimbabwe or anything else into, just laughing at them because it's just a blip on the scale of what they printed in new wealth in Zimbabwe versus what all the central banks. I think for my recent stats, Josh, it was around $7-8 trillion that have been added to the economy in just bailouts by this is just central banks. We're not talking about the governments even, because the governments is probably double of that. So it's just mind-boggling.
Well, and John, you warned about this in your book years ago, and also, I mean, we've warned about this going into, like you mentioned, confronting Bill Morneau, the finance minister, several years ago, where he just laughed off what we were saying. But I mean, what about interest rates? How negative can we possibly go in Canada?
Well, if it goes after the guys that have written the policies on this, you could go as low as 5 to minus 10%. Nobody knows what they're willing to do to try to save the economy. Well, they won't save the economy. They're just a bunch of bozos that have zero clue what they're doing because they haven't studied, his deep historical monetary history. They just studied the last 90 years.
Well, how far are we away from like a reset switch then? Because that just seems impossible. Like minus 5 to 10%. I mean, how far away are we just from hitting the big red button and resetting everything?
Well, when it comes to the actual gold prices, Josh, like the current gold price here, let's talk about the Canadian gold price, because the U.S. gold price is based off of fake paper assets. So the Canadian gold price is currently at 2,445.7, and that is as of today. The old high, let's see here, just give me 1 second here, I'll try to find it. Yeah, the old high was 2,461.4, and that was set on May the 16th. So what you're seeing is the guy that told us that gold is, worthless relic, a barbarous relic, and, who cares about it, is totally wrong. And he is the one that's going to be, left being like, I don't know, he's going to be laughed at in history books for being so blatantly ignorant and so a lack of knowledge of understanding how money works. The current finance minister. And of course, it was hilarious, Josh, how they said, like, oh, it's going to be 250 billion deficit. Then they said it was going to be 250 to 300 billion. And then when they actually came out with the numbers, it was 343 billion.
Government and messing up a budget? No way.
And not to just ignore that, to talk about all the provincial governments that are bailout. Like here in Manitoba, we had a $200 million deficit, which is terrible. But then they went to a $5 billion deficit, all their interventions as well. And that's we're bashing old government here because that's a conservative government. Yeah. So it's not that it's just one. It's just all of them believe in the same scam, which is central just printing money. Is it central planning and printing money within it? And now we're seeing this big scale where they're coming in with both economic and medical tyranny. Medical tyranny we haven't seen so bad yet, but now it's really getting pushed in. And of course, Denmark just came out with what was it called? It's not vaccination, but it's immunity passport, where you have to be tested for COVID and all this stuff in order to
ID
travel.
2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ID 2020, and honestly, they're not going to force vaccinate. They're just not going to let you do anything if you don't get the vaccine, tied to some kind of social credit system like China, which, again, John and I have been warning about for years here at WHAM about the coming social credit system. It's right here. And honestly, earlier you said hilarious. I thought you said hit-larious, which would make a lot more sense at this point. But mark my words, my friends, we will see lynch mobs in the near future for these criminals and these frauds that have done this to not just the economy, but to the average person trying to make a living. And mark my words, if that doesn't happen, we're in a lot of trouble. I'm not saying it should happen. I'm just saying it will happen, or else we will probably end up in a complete Stalinist country.
Well, take a look at people are very angry, Josh. Look at what just happened with the Manitoban that rammed down the gates at, I forgot the place that Trudeau has there in Ottawa, but people are very angry. And I listen to a lot of angry people. When I post stuff online, there's a lot of angry people out there that are very frustrated because they know what's coming next. It's another massive hike in taxes, stealing more money from people, because how are they going to pay for this? Did you really think that, oh, no, we're going to keep the interest rate low, it's going to be fine. Let's go to negative interest rates. Let's keep this Ponzi scheme going. But these guys, like all of these central bankers and the current government people are literally perpetrating the biggest crime of the millennia. This is ever worse than any atrocity that I've seen, any murders or anything, because this is just going to cause a fallout on such epic proportions that they think they could push it off the next time, and then it'll be even worse than that time. Like, what do you think? Yeah,
Sorry, John, but it's a global mass genocide. It's a global mass genocide that people haven't realized yet to full extent, because a lot of businesses are just running off the last of their cash, and by December they're going to be gone. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, there's a lot of business. A lot of them have gone under, but there's still a lot of businesses up and running." And it's like, yeah, they're running out of cash. They're forced at small capacities. They're bankrupt, and they'll be gone by December or January for sure.
No, 100%. Like, look at, they're running on 50 to 75% capacity. The businesses that are able to open, then they are forced to, be, running on all these different crazy regulations. Like, I remember when it was mid-pandemic, that was very nice to be around. I went to the store, I did my thing, I lived my life actually way better than usual. And then, of course, right as we were getting out of it, then the government went crazy and put in laws like some. Actually, Superstore is very fine here in Manitoba. All the superstores, there's no mask mandate. Like, it's just voluntary to, wash your hands. Everybody's going in. The only thing that you can see is a tiny little bit of social distancing measures. But at least it's way, way better than Sobeys, which, they're literally, I was walking in there. I like to, of course, not do things the way they're telling me to, because I think it's utterly stupid. So I walk in there, and then this guy come running after me like, "You got to wash your hands." And then I said, like, I don't want to, I said to him, I don't want to kill my immune system, because it really, destroys your immune system to take away all the good bacteria and everything.
And guys, that's literally the whole concept of a virus. I mean, viruses are dead to begin with. Their exosomes. They go into your body. They cause your immune system to attack itself. It's not the virus that attacks you. It's your immune system attacking yourself, causing infections, causing other problems. And if you are inside all the time, you don't get vitamin D, you wash your hands 24/7, you wear a mask breathing in your own CO2.
Yeah, not to mention the social distancing. You know where that comes from? That comes from social isolations that the CIA use to, terrorize people, making them depressed and making them, want to just spill the beans, because they're just feeling terrible, because humans need human interactions. And when they take away all this stuff, they're really just wrecking havoc on the population.
Right. And it's going, I mean, so many people are killing themselves right now. Poverty skyrocketing. Guys, this isn't good. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Mark my words, they're going to pile on another lockdown that's worse than the first one. They will not relent power until you make them relent power. That needs to be understood. That needs to be remembered. And of course, it's weird that the United States, in a lot of ways, depending on the state, is actually worse than Canada, which is a far more socialist country. But I mean, I went through New Mexico, and they told me I was just driving. They said I couldn't stop and go to a hotel, or else I'd be forced by police into a 14-day mandatory quarantine, involuntary. And I'm like, well, I need to stop at a hotel. I was like falling asleep at the wheel at nighttime, waiting to get to the Arizona border so I could go to sleep. I mean, it's insane. They were closing all the rest stops. Do you know how dangerous that is? And I mean, I can only imagine car crashes are increasing there, and I can only imagine suicides are skyrocketing. They're pulling people over for not wearing a mask alone in their car. I mean, it's insane. And then in Canada, they're not doing that as much, though they were the first to stop province to province travel. And the reason I'm not in Canada right now, I'm in transit, quote unquote, to Canada in the United States, is because they're telling me if I go to Canada, I won't be be allowed to leave the country, no matter what country I go to. Even if the country allows foreigners in, I will not be allowed to leave the country. When will people realize this isn't about a virus, this is about controlling you, an absolute tyranny, and I will not obey. I will not abide by it, and I hope that you guys don't too. John, before we close it off, can you give like a bottom line? What do you think? I mean, this is just another level of Twilight Zone that we're dealing with right now.
Well, we haven't seen nothing yet, and of course, everybody panicked now today actually because suddenly there was 1.2 million more people that got unemployed in the United States. We haven't seen nothing yet of what's coming. Like all these, like the government has zero clue. There's, extremely few people that actually have had a job or have been, working for a corporate, actually owned a business that are in the government. They have zero clue about business, and that just shows you from their balance sheet. They just really think that they're, brilliant minds. Meanwhile, they're running everybody into the future gutter of monetary history. And that's what, we're going to just have historians write about us, 100, 200 years from now and be like, wow, those guys were total morons. But, there's so many episodes like that throughout history, and we always seem to forget them and think that we can invent it better this time, like modern monetary theory, all these different things. We're going to see a lot more money from the governments. We're going to see tons of more, fiscal stimulus where they're going to just push in money. They're going to create all this infrastructure spending, all this garbage that's going to be spit out by the government, and the government is going to lead the way, because that's what we got to do to get us out of this, because we're in a massive depression, basically. That's what we're going to see. We might actually see stock prices skyrocket because of all the massive slushing of money. Like think about Robinhood, for example. Now everybody's on Robinhood. Everybody's getting into options trading now. The mainstream public are getting in right at the peak. But I guess, that could go really high. Look at the Venezuelan stock market that we will probably be competing with. They're in a second hyperinflation over there. The second currency is hyperinflating. Sorry for laughing, but it's very sad. And it's just crazy days right now. This is beyond any of our craziest imaginations, actually. We imagine some bad things happening, but I don't know, Josh, this just feels like there's nothing that we, through our 4 years that we done videos together, that we actually have seen. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, we warned about the biggest global depression in history and it happening all over the world at the same time, but I don't think any of us, we've even done videos in the past when the Ebola crisis happened and stuff like that, Zika and all that kind of stuff, that they would use a pandemic to do crazy things. But this is a whole new level. No one could have really predicted this exact situation happening unless they had foreknowledge, but Bill Gates. But, it's interesting, though. You mentioned people in government, they've never held a job in these kinds of sectors. In many cases, a great example is the former Premier of Manitoba, Greg Selinger, who we had argued with and debated once at a bar. He was a finance minister of Manitoba at one point, and he ended up just bending the knee and going, yeah, you're right about everything we were saying about Hayek, Rothbard, Mises, all this stuff, because he didn't actually know anything about economics. He was just assigned the position as a finance minister, and you guys would be amazed how often that happens, including health ministers, etc. Health ministers that have no background in health at all. They're just like assigned because they're bureaucrats and they're pushing paper and writing laws and enforcing things based on what they're being paid to do and what they're being paid to say, and it's all completely fraudulent. And you guys, the people watching, are the ones at the butt end of this that get hit the worst. Always. Government will always grow. Collectivism begets collectivism, and they'll just keep printing and printing, and the central banks love it while it's happening, while it all ends the same way every time. We talk about us being looked at as stupid in history. Well, look at Nazi Germany, look at Soviet Russia, look at the Roman Empire. It tells you all you need to know about these cycles that we go on, and it always ends worse the next time. And we are heading towards a brick wall. We went through the first one. It was kind of thin enough to break through and keep driving, but the next one, we're going to be stopped dead and we're going to be splattered all over the place. So I hope to God all of you guys prepare.
Yeah, let me just say one last thing. Currency war, trade war, and then hot war. Every time throughout history, you had, all these craziness happen. And look at that was exactly what happened when Germany went crazy as well. And look at the United States, what they're doing right now, like how crazy Trump and everybody is, and what craziness is going to come out. I don't know. I'm really worried about the current state, because if we don't educate people about what the governments and everybody will do during this crisis, because we know exactly their playbook, it's going to be too late for everybody when that trigger gets pushed on that nuclear button.
Yeah, we're seeing that with Iranian weapon depots getting exploded mysteriously lately, which I've been reporting on. There's always a ramp up to war. It always ends with war, and that's exactly what we're watching right now. As we close this off, thanks for going into this with us, John. We'll be continuing to update all of you on this subject as it elapses. Of course, as always, guys, be prepared. Always be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. But right now, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So make sure to find us on other social medias, by the way, because we will not be on YouTube much longer. I'm counting my days until about November 5th, 2020. Remember, the 5th of November is when I'm leaving with World Alternative Media from YouTube, only posting trailers to our full videos on other sites after that point, because they'll probably delete us soon. They're deleting all my friends, and it's only a matter of time. So we got to get off of YouTube before they delete us, and we can't show you where to go. So I'm taking a stand. I hope other independent medias join me, and I'm going to Flote.app as well as BitChute and Library and Minds. Join me on there. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also you should check me and Tim Pachot out. We're at Discord, of course. We're trying to get out of the aim of the general public. So just use alternative media. These big, colossal, cluster Fs of social media like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook are just massive monopolies being used by governments to control us.
Yeah, absolutely. China, US, they all work together, guys. And at the end of the line, it's you that gets hurt the most. So check those links below. Also, GoFundMe, Patreon, subscribe to our help pledge to keep WHAM alive, because we are 100% demonetized because we went against the World Health Organization, which is made into the community guidelines on YouTube. And also, join our new newsletter at www.iamband.com. It only takes 2 seconds to put your email in on there. It helps us out a lot. So help us keep reaching all of you. And we appreciate everyone watching. These are crazy times. Try to stay sane, be peaceful, and remember, it's better to evolve than revolt. Though right now, honestly, I can't say I'm against some form of revolt, because I'm getting really sick of this. It's driving me mentally crazy. It's mentally exhausting, and we need to start moving and mobilizing, because this is insane. Anyway, I appreciate you going into this with us, John. You guys could find John's book on Amazon. The End of Freedom, How Our Monetary System Enslaves Us, as well as Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World, ? So make sure to check that out on Amazon. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. We really can't do it without you. We've been so insanely shadow banned, about 90% at this point, and 95% demonetized. As Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube, comes in and says that she is shutting down quote-unquote controversial content and cutting out the views on this controversial content by 70%. She's been bragging about it. We need your help more than ever in this battle for truth in information. You guys are what keeps us alive, so we really appreciate just even $1 a month makes a huge difference. If everyone could give just $1 a month, we wouldn't even have to worry about competing against a mainstream propaganda networks. You can also donate to our Bitcoin address on the screen for you to scan, if you please, as well as in the comments and description. Liking and sharing makes a big difference as well, and finding us on alternative social media platforms like Flote.app, that's FLOTE.app, makes a huge difference. We're at Josh Sigurdson as well as at Wham. Flote is replacing Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon all in one with encrypted private messaging, and of course monetization on videos for creators, live streams with super chats in crypto, and most of all, no algorithm, because at the end of the day, it's all about reach, guys. This is all about actually reaching people with the message and waking up the public. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, Minds, BitChute, all sorts of different platforms. Try to follow us on as many things as possible, because very soon this channel will very likely just be completely deleted. from YouTube, and you'll never see us again, and you'll be stuck with only the mainstream networks. Also, come on out and see us at Anarcho Vegas 2020 in Las Vegas, Nevada in July, where such speakers such as G. Edward Griffin and many others will be speaking. You could use promo code WHAM on your VIP tickets and save 10%, as well as buy extremely cheap tickets for just $20.20. You won't find a cheaper conference than this with such amazing names. Check anarchovegas.com for more information on that. We hope to see you out there. And anyway, I really appreciate all of you guys joining us. You make it possible for us to survive in this volatile, propagandized climate. Until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.
Bye.